Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duckbricks. I'm Chris, and the time has come. This is our review of set number 40581 Bionicle, Tahu, and Takua, a brand new LEGO set for 2023. So if you have any questions on how exactly to get this free gift with purchase, I've actually put out a very detailed video, which is linked in the description below, that explains exactly how to get it, what price point it applies to, and my recommendations for current LEGO sets that you might like as a Bionicle fan. But so this video is just going to dive straight into the in-depth review of this model, taking a look at all of the different parts of it, from Tahu to Takua to even the little Makoki stone and all the different scenery and lava flowing. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and I cannot wait to take a closer look at this incredible model. This was put together with a lot of pride and joy in the Bionicle theme, and it is just so cool to see Bionicle being referenced in 2023, which is certainly not a sentence I thought I would be uttering this time last year. Now, what's even cooler is that I actually got a chance to interview the designer of this particular set, so I'll be sharing some of the thoughts and insights I was able to garner from that particular interview when we go over the individual reviews. So if you want to hear some insights from the designer himself and how he was able to craft this particular set, I will also be sharing those in this video. So there's a lot to cover here. Let's jump right into our review of set number 40581, Bionicle, Tahu, and Takua. At long last, it is here. This is Bionicle, Tahu, and Takua, set number 40581, the gift with purchase set for January to February of 2023. And man, there is a lot of stuff that I have to say about this. Almost too much for one review, which is why, again, we've split this up into multiple videos. The first video on these talked about how to actually get the set and talked a little bit about kind of the gift with purchase aspect of it and the viability of the set itself, and this is purely just going to be giving a review of the product as a whole. Now, I did get a chance to interview Nico, who is the designer of this particular model, so many thanks for him to being able to do an interview with Land. That was really fantastic, but I actually will be publishing the interview details in a separate video because there's so much more that I could talk about there. I'll be giving some tidbits when we talk about the review and why certain design choices were made here from the interview, but if you do want to hear about that full-on interview, depending on when that is scheduled to come out, I believe probably in a few days or so, I'll have some very special guests on there for discussing the interview as well, so do stay tuned to the channel for that. But without further ado, let's take a look at what everyone has been waiting for, what many people, not even I, believed was real for a long time. This is Bionicle 2023. So here we have our articulatable figure of Tahu, the original Toe of Fire from 2001. We also have his companion Takua here, which is a really nice one to get, which is actually the first official set form of the Mectoran version of Takua. And we have a little bit of a build referencing the original story of Bionicle, or the way that the Turaga told it to the Matoran of Motunui, featuring the Makoki stones of Makuta and Motunui. Now, the first thing I actually want to talk about here is not the build at all, and that is actually the packaging and the instructions. So starting off with the packaging, obviously it was very impractical for LEGO to bring back a canister for this GWP. The designers said they did consider it, they did actually look into, well, maybe could we do a canister for it, but that was quickly ruled out because you can't really get new molds with a GWP. You actually typically can't even get new prints. They were able to somehow get these two pieces printed. They had the budget to get two pieces printed, so they were able to use it to great use here, but so that's really good. But for the most part, if you can't do a special packaging, what's really special about this is that they essentially took the original box design of a lot of the early Bionicle sets, which featured this kind of blue or gray stripe alongside the box, and they've replicated it on this particular piece of packaging here. What's really cool to me is that they actually specifically stated that they got some of the original Bionicle packaging team members to work on this. So people who were working on the Bionicle packaging in 2001 came back over 20 years later to work on this particular box. And I think that is really special. They made sure the logo was exactly correct. I think initially they had like the 2003 logo on there and they said, no, we really want the 2001 logo. So a lot of really nice details like that were paid attention to here. And it really comes together because when I was unboxing this for the first time, I have to say, I have been holding on to this set for a long time. I don't know if I can say exactly how long, but like I know this has been coming for at least a few months, and I've been dying to talk about it with people. I finally can because it's finally been revealed, but When this first arrived at my house, I did not know that this was coming, at least in this form. I knew that the Bionicle GWP was coming. I thought at first I was getting like the Blacktron GWP, so I opened up the packaging. Images of this hadn't leaked yet, so I hadn't even seen it whatsoever. I opened up the package at my house, and I was just blown away. It felt to me that I was opening a sealed, new, kind of unheard of 2001 set for the first time from Bionicle. That was how authentic this box was to the original theme, because you've got the exact coloration used of the stripe, kind of that vintage kind of gray look. You have some of the exact renders used from the original theme, like some of the lava spills here and the rock work is actually from the original 2001 line, just with this new model placed on top of it. And then you have some great artwork here. You have a look at the stand here on the back with some extra artwork. You have a really cool piece of artwork here which showcases how this comes together. Of course, how the Kanohi mask can attach onto that face. You have the limbs and everything attaching on. It just felt so much like it was making a new Bionicle set for the first time, which was just so cool to me. Very, very nice to see. Now, this is what you can see on the box. There's all the different translations of just the word "and," because Tahu and Takua basically aren't translated other than like one time, so I just find that kind of funny how they were able to list every single one down here. But yeah, this is the box. Not much else I can say about the packaging, so let's move on into the instruction manual. Now, for the instruction manual, in case you aren't aware, LEGO has been basically making all their instruction manuals look the same across their entire product portfolio. They started this in mid-2022. It was a little bit controversial because they got rid of using kind of the actual background for the box art and instead just put everything on a white background, but I think it works okay here, especially as a GWP. Just a plain white background as well. So, man, it's good to see that like LEGO and Bionicle are trademarks of the LEGO group on a modern instruction manual. That is really cool. So, you open it up and you are greeted with this. This was so cool to see because this is actually one of the original renders from 2001. They specifically said they have still in the archives, the digital archives of the company, all of these files in high definition still saved, and even some of the background images saved without the actual characters themselves. So what they did is they took out the original Tahu and Jaller, they replaced it with Tahu and Takua, and this is kind of the artwork that you would see on Bionicle.com back in the day, or see it in posters and whatnot. So they literally just have the exact original artwork of the island of Motunui, the infected How, and then you've got your two characters here, which is just so cool to see. And what was even more special is that the booklet starts off with, first of all, a look at Tahu here, against some stairs. You have a lot of the original artwork, again, from Bionicle, with just one new one with the two characters here, but everything else here is original. And you have a quote from Greg Farshti. Now, here's the thing. Yeah. That's not how you spell Greg Farshti's name. This is a real LEGO moment. Like, LEGO had to mess up something. You know, there was something that had to be messed up. There always is something, and this time it was his name. Not really sure how that got past the many checks that LEGO does in terms of making sure that everything is correct. They actually said that they were able to get this quote from Greg Farshti just a couple of months before he left the LEGO group, and he was very gracious and was able to write this out and actually give it kind of as a dedication for the set. Unfortunately, they misspelled his name. Now, I thought, when I opened this up, I thought I was going crazy. I kind of got gaslighted by LEGO. I was like, wait, have I been spelling Greg Farshti's name wrong, like, for the past 20 years? So I was really confused. I even went on Discord, and I kind of asked super discreetly, after thinking about it for a while, I decided to just ask, like, hey, how do you spell Greg Farshti's name? And everyone was like, you have an H after the S. There's supposed to be an H after the S. And I said, has he ever gone by just Greg Farshti without the H? And they were like, no, he's never gone by that. His name is with an H. So I was like, okay, cool, just checking. And a lot of people were saying, oh, I don't know like why you wouldn't know this. And I was like, well, no, I'm not the person who's I'm not the reason why this is being asked. But you know what? It's still nice to get a dedication from him. It is unfortunate that for all the copies of this set, the name is misspelled. That is just very unfortunate that happened. But you know, LEGO does make mistakes. They do make mistakes a lot in a lot of the UCS or Ultimate Collector Series Star Wars plaques and whatnot. So lots of issues that do happen, but you can see his exact dedication here. In 2001, the LEGO Group introduced a new theme that would become a global sensation, LEGO Bionicle. This story of mighty heroes with elemental powers took the world by storm and inspired comics, novels, and 4 films. Now 2 of the most popular characters, Tahu and Takua, return in the form of this exclusive set in System Bricks. This special set is not only a tribute to the Bionicle heroes, it's a thank you to the legions of fans who have kept the spirit of Bionicle alive for more than 20 years. It's the passion and creativity of the fans of all ages that ensure that the legends of the Toa will always live on, which I think is a wonderful dedication and a massive thank you for Greg Farshty for actually being able to write this and include it in the booklet. From there, you jump right into things. Little to no explanation is given as to what these are, so I can imagine folks who just get the GWP after spending a certain amount on LEGO with no knowledge of Bionicle might be wondering, like, what is this? And that was actually something they discussed in terms of developing this set. They really wanted to make it be as kind of appealing to as possible to fans of Bionicle, even just casual fans or fans who were really big fans of Bionicle back in the day, but maybe didn't stick around all the way up to, say, the Great Spirit Robot or something like that. They talked about the Great Spirit Robot a lot in the interview and said that they bet that a majority of Bionicle fans probably don't even know what the Great Spirit Robot is, or at least majority of Bionicle fans who say were fans in 2001 to 2003 and maybe fell off after that, and the general audience would have no idea what the Big Gray Robot is, but to some extent, everybody kind of recognizes Bionicle, or most LEGO fans do recognize it. Oh, it's the red one, is what they'll say, and that's kind of what they wanted to capture here in this particular set. So let's get into the build itself. So first of all, we have the actual retelling of the legend of the Great Spirit. So you have Makuta and the kind of Matanui rock here, which is what they were supposed to represent. I think this is a pretty good representation of it. Sakota did it really well as well, using the exact same egg piece, and he used black bricks, which I do think black bricks would have been a little bit better here, but I can understand dark gray works just as fine, and having just a stack of black bricks maybe would have clashed a little bit with the base of the set as well, so they decided not to do that. But moving on, I think we should talk about the builds themselves for the main characters, starting off with Takua. So I'll set this aside, and let's take a look at Takua here, and he is actually more posable than the original Avtorin. Not Avtorin, Mechtorin. Well, I guess technically he is an Avtorin. So taking a look at Takua here, he can move around his head back and forth, and this is a print. There are no stickers used in this set, so they thankfully had the budget somehow for a GWP to have 2 exclusive prints, which is kind of unheard of for LEGO. They usually don't have these, but they had the budget for the nostalgic ones, so the Blacktron one had the budget to get a new minifigure, and this one had the budget to give us 2 new prints. One function I really like is that you can kind of treat these as removable masks in and of themselves, so you can actually see his eyes here. They joked about it in the interview that now the Bionicle masks for 2023 attached by their eyeballs just attaching to the masks, and that's exactly what they are. So the graphic design of the masks themselves, which I think is worth talking about, is something they really had to spend a lot of time trying to get right, because initially they at first were considering, well, what if we just put a print of the original mask itself onto this particular piece, and then it just looked like kind of a decal, like you put a sticker of a mask on it, and it didn't really look like a face, so that was gotten rid of pretty quickly. They then tried a lot of different shapings to how do we get the proportions right of this, and how cartoony do we push it? Do we try to kind of give it a Matanui online game look and feel and really go in that direction, or do we try to kind of give it a general Picari direction? And eventually they decided to just kind of model this after the original Picari, or the Mask of Strength there, because they did want the design to maybe be used for fans to, say, create a Toa Onua or something like that, of doing this in black and coloring the eyes green. So they wanted to kind of keep the design language the same and not stylize it too much, which I do respect. Now, this does include the backpack, which is very, very important for Monog players of Matanui online game. If you aren't aware, this was kind of a backpack that you use when playing through the point-and-click adventure game, which was on Bionicle.com in 2001, which really introduced a lot of folks to the story. Takua was the main protagonist there. Now, his feet are mounted on mixel joints, so they can move up and down, back and forth, all the way that you would want. And I do like how they're depicted here. The Mechtoran feet kind of had those 2 kind of technic holes here. There were a lot of different variations of of how to do the feat, but eventually this is what they landed on. And one thing I really like is how you can actually move the arms up and down, which this screams Mnog to me. I mean, this type of pose here is something that is really, really reminiscent of what you would see in-game, of the Matoran kind of having their arms down like this and kind of in this position. So this is just really cool. And one thing that I do like that they were able to do was the inclusion of two different types of clips here for the hands. You've got one rotated on the vertical side and one horizontal to hold the disc. They actually mentioned that they have done statistical research. If you include two of the different types of clips used in a very similar way in one LEGO set, over 50% of people will just do it randomly and choose incorrectly. So typically LEGO does not do these, but they figured for an 18+ adult set that was a free gift with purchase, they were going to include it anyway to have one hand kind of be like this, and the other hand be different because, again, that was how the two hands were different in the original models. One was set up to throw discs, and I appreciate they were able to do that. Now, the building instructions, I believe, do showcase you can actually push this all the way in, but then that would limit your articulation to just pivoting on a joint. What you really want to do here is just give it a little bit of flex in the black joint there so you can really kind of bend it up and down like so and get those Mnog poses that you've been always wanting to do with your Matoran, but can't because they're typically stuck like this on the actual builds for the classic 2001 Matoran builds. Now, I do like the usage of the 3x3 disc for the throwing disc here for the Kanoka. I do think it would be really cool if we got a print on it, like if we got like the HAL print, but again, they were limited to only 2 prints in this set, and I think those 2 were used very, very well. Not much else I can say about Takua here other than I would love to see this particular print for the Bakari be reused for Onua. If fan designers are able to do that, I would absolutely get stickers for that and kind of try to make my own builds in this style because this is a really cool way of depicting things. I've already seen a lot of mocks out there that are depicting the other Mektoran in this particular style, and I really appreciate that because it really shows the creativity of Bionicle fans. Now it's time to take a look at the real deal, the main man himself. This is Tahu, courageous Toa of Fire. So Tahu comes with a display stand where you can really kind of mimic some of the original poses that he was going through, kind of surfing through the lava, and he is really poseable. He does have waist articulation, returning from 2016 Uniter sets, and that is very, very cool to see that kind of being articulated on a ball joint here, which does add a lot more detail. You have just the standard bend to the elbows, and more articulation than the original Tahu had. They did talk about the possibility of including a gear function, but decided to kind of try to make this as small as possible to reduce the amount of money people would have to spend to get it, which I do really appreciate. I'm glad they went through the thought process of that. He has his flaming sword here, again a new print for the Kanohi Hao, which you can remove it, so there you have Tahu's face, and this is a really nice print for the Hao. I really like how the graphic design came across for this particular print here. It just looks really good, and I appreciate the attention to detail because his eyes are pink and not red, which is very important. Now, removing Tahu from the board here, you can see he is just attached basically on 2 Technic holes and pins on the bottom of his feet here, which are nice to see. I do actually really like the stand. Let's talk about the stand for a little bit here because this really does make the model feel like a legitimate kind of 18+ display stand and something really special. I like the work done for kind of adding some rock work to the lava itself. It's very basic, but it also was kind of reminiscent of some of the Suvas and kind of what you would see masks erupt out of in the 2001 storyline. So I do like how this also kind of is reminiscent of that design aesthetic. Also kind of looks like the stairs leading up to Kini Nui, or maybe even the top of a Toa canister. It's just the rounded aspect of it and the beveled nature of it just feels very Bionicle to me. But then we can move on to Tahu himself. So this is a very, very poseable figure. It may be one of the most poseable figures we've ever gotten out of Mixel joints. You can bend at the knees, which is really good. Unfortunately, you cannot bend the feet. They did say that this was so you could very easily kind of attach him to the stand here. Otherwise, that would be a little bit harder to attach. But again, if you do want to modify it so that you can bend it by the feet, you can easily do that. Just like take this out, take this out, put a mixel joint here, put a mixel joint there, and there you go. You can bend the feet. So if you have mixel joints sitting around, it's very easy to just add feet articulation. But as of right now, it basically is just movable like this. I like the attention to detail having these slope pieces, which do mimic the way that those pieces worked for the original leg joints. Now, again, as I mentioned, you can pivot him at the waist here, so you can have him looking upwards or kind of swiveling to the side or having all sorts of bends in the torso, which is very cool. I like how you've got the black ball joint still remaining in the center of the chest there, still to scale. Sure, they could have done like maybe just a smaller 1x1 piece, but I think the ball joint ties it back to Bionicle really well. They were trying to figure out what pieces could be used to represent gears and eventually landed on these particular clip pieces, which I think was a good choice here to use. You've got some kind of Among Us pieces, the clip pieces here to attach onto the tops of the arms to really allow it to be moved around but also add some detail. And one thing I really like is that the hands are different, because obviously for Tahu, you had one hand which had two axles pointing outwards, so you have the one hand represented here, and you have the other one which was kind of this ridged one here, so you have the spikes on the side of the arm and the ridge pointing downwards, and the bend in this kind of just very simple kind of curving joint here to allow him to bend and swing the sword, which is just really, really cool to see. And I also really appreciate how you can see the glow of his eyes from the back of the head here, much like the brain stalks in the initial sets. Honestly, there isn't really even that much else I can say about Tahu here. He is really posable, it's really fun to get him into good poses, and I would love to see an entire Toa team built out of this particular style. Actually, I'm sure that's already been done, but if there are any instructions for those, I would love to actually build those myself and maybe print out decals for the masks there, because I would love to see the entire Toa team depicted like this. This is just so cool of a model to get, and yeah. Now, I know that I guess the elephant in the room is that a lot of Bionicle fans, or maybe fans who aren't really aware of how LEGO works, are wondering, why don't they just give us a new kind of construction plus action figure in the G1 pieces, or CCBS? Now, one thing that is actually really interesting to me, and I'm shocked they even considered this, is that during the designer interview, they said they considered literally just bringing back the original Tahu Mada set. But unfortunately, since all the molds have been destroyed, they really tried to look into, can we actually just remake all the molds for it? It eventually was determined that the cost was way too great, that was just simply not feasible. They looked at CCBS, also CCBS molds have been destroyed, so they couldn't do that. And really, this was pretty much all they could do in terms of a posable brick-built joint figure for today's world, and for what LEGO can do in 2023, especially as a gift with purchase. Mind you, gift with purchase sets typically don't even get new prints, and they certainly, very rarely, I can't even think of the last one that got a new mold. Certainly, I don't even know if that's ever happened for a GWP in recent history. So it's very rare for them to get specialized parts dedicated to them, because they are just free gift with purchases. So the fact that we even got printed masks is just a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Now, in terms of the rest of the design of the model, mixel joints are color locked. You cannot change the colors of joints because of very specific tolerances of plastic. LEGO, it is actually physically impossible for them to change the color of these joints from dark gray or kind of the light gray here. It's just, they can't do it. It will snap too easily. Even changing the color to something like black wouldn't work. They do have a new mixel joint piece in black they released this year, but that may be specific to that one piece. But as of right now, the mixel joints are locked to gray. So they did the best they could, and I think they actually did a really good job. I mean, if you kind of look at it, I do kind of like the way that the joints themselves are a different color, because it makes the orange and the red feel like armor, and maybe these inner pieces being more kind of the biomechanical aspects, and more robotic and more gray. So I do like how those looked in general. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I have to say about the model that is kind of limited to constraints. The final thing I do want to say is that maybe if you haven't been in the LEGO scene for too long, or maybe this is just kind of bringing you back, you may not be aware of exactly how things work in terms of GWPs and how often we get them. It is very rare to get a GWP or a gift with purchase set that is only an $100 value. Now, when the limit for the set was first released, I know a lot of Bionicle fans were a little bit upset, and they were saying, oh, why is it so expensive? Why do we have to spend so much money on LEGO? And the thing is, that was definitely a big concern for the designers to work out. They were really worried that this was going to cost too much. They actually proposed another design that I don't know if I can talk about it right now, but when the interview comes out, we definitely can talk about what we can talk about there. But There was another concept proposed that was a much larger figure, but that also would have essentially made the price point for the GWP skyrocket way up. The Blacktron Invader set, which is already like a fairly small spaceship, that was an $190 price point for January 1st. We've had $250 builds before. Like, let me see if I can get one, for example. Here, the Lego house set, this set right here. This could only be purchased if you spent $250 at shop.lego.com or in LEGO stores. Sure, this has a lot more builds and a lot more pieces. It has 583 pieces compared to 219. But that's the kind of scaling we're getting here. It is very, very rare for LEGO to do a GWP at $100, which in today's day and age is very cheap for a GWP to be priced at. LEGO wants GWPs to incentivize people to buy new sets. They want them to be priced as expensive as possible, so $100 is actually probably one of the cheapest ones we've gotten in recent history. Even $120 was pretty low in the past few years, so $100 is kind of unheard of in terms of giving us a GWP, especially of this quality. Sure, they've maybe offered like a polybag here or there for like maybe a $65 or $80 price point for GWP, but those are just little $5 builds, and those polybags are also usually sold separately as well, so it's a very special case that they were able to try to make this as small as possible to allow the majority of people who want it to be able to get it. Now, I think that is very commendable that they actually were able to get this as small as possible to make sure it was only at an $100 price point. The designers had no insight into when this would be released, why it was being released, or what price point it was being released at. They basically just were given a prompt to make a Bionicle GWP, and they were like, you know what? Let's try to make this as economically as possible so the most Bionicle fans who want it can get it. And hopefully, if you are a Bionicle fan, there are some sets out there for you to get for this set, and it probably will appear on Bricklink soon enough anyways. If you wait a few months, I bet you can get this from Bricklink for like $20 to $25, so you have that as an option as well. But with that, I think we have summed up this absolutely phenomenal, incredible Bionicle 2023 GWP. I think if you were to ask me to build something with today's limitations, if I was given the prompt to make a gift with purchase for a Bionicle, I've got 2 printed pieces, and I can only work from LEGO's existing parts library, so no G1 parts, no CCBS, no nothing, not an actual action figure. It has to be built out of system. This is beyond anything I could have come up with, and this is clearly the result of a lot of love and care being put into it. The designer of this model, Nico, is a big fan of Bionicle, and that really shows. It really shows. The passion comes through here in terms of giving us Bionicle in 2023. That's all I have to say, and thank you to LEGO for making this happen. Thank you to Nico for putting this model together and making this available for everybody to be able to get. I cannot wait to see what the Bionicle community thinks of this and how they will react to it. I also am very shocked to see that this leaked like 5 times before the launch. Every time it leaked, it was so painful because I knew about this. I believe I got the first pictures of it, or I think it arrived at my house very early, and I can't exactly say when, but it was just very painful seeing this just get continuously leaked over and over again, and a lot of speculation and fear about like, oh, how much is this going to cost, or is this going to be linked to certain themes only, and so on and so forth, and to finally have this out in the open and be published and public and be officially revealed from LEGO is very nice, and I cannot wait to see more people get their hands on this. If I manage to get multiple copies of the set, I certainly will be including it as prizes for future fan-in contests. I may even do a giveaway depending on how many I get. Unfortunately, most of my January 1st purchases are already accounted for. I bought pretty much all of the January 1st sets when they came out at the beginning of the month, so I don't really have that much to spend when it comes to $100 worth of LEGO, but I'll see what there's always something to get. I'll see what I can do, I'll see what I can get, and if I'm able to get even just one more of these, I definitely will try to make them prizes for future Duck Bricks fan-in contests. So this is just such a cool set to have. I think my favorite part's actually Takua. Takua's just really fun. Can't wait to display this alongside the rest of my Bionicle collection, and what a way to start 2023. I think the best way to sum up this video is by taking a look at some of the alternate models that you can actually build with the parts from the set that are inspired by the Rahi of the Bionicle universe. These were built by Nick Voss and Neek Tooth Dominoes, so they're both really prominent LEGO designers. One of them is the one who actually designed them. Nico designed this particular set, so it's really cool to see these actually come from LEGO, come from the designers of some stuff that you can make with just the pieces. I think the one that stands out to me the most is this one here, because it is a direct reference to the LEGO Master Model Builder set in 2001 for Bionicle. They put out this kind of Master Model Builder set with different Rahi that you could create, and you can clearly see a lot of the different ones here being direct references to stuff that you would see from that set, and also from the Motunui online game. From the Kofojaga scorpions to the Ussel crabs, and of course the classic birds that you would see in Powahi, there are a lot of really neat Bionicle references here that are instantly recognizable. You've even got one of like the birds from Monog. I believe it was called the Kahu or something like that. That was kind of the smaller bird that you could see in the Motunui online game, and it's really fascinating to see just the amount of creativity and ingenuity that goes into making these different Rahi designs, again, just by using pieces from this one set. So you don't have to just build Tahu and Takua, you can make all sorts of creations with just these pieces, which is really good because if you are a prolific LEGO buyer and you happen to get multiple copies of the set, this is a great way to use those multiple copies to build your own creations and to create something new. And I personally would love to see people do more system Bionicle stuff, maybe try making Rahi or other characters in this style. I'm sure a lot of Makas have already made probably all 6 Toa in this style and whatnot. I'm sure we're going to see all sorts of Matoran and whatnot, but I think it's really cool that you can just use the bricks to make these Rahi that are really close to what we would see back in 2001 Bionicle, at least generally aesthetically speaking. Of course, given all of the limitations, which were only 2 new prints, which again is special for a GWP. Most GWPs only get stickers. It's very, very rare for any gift with purchase to get anything new, especially new prints. So we got 2 new prints, which was already really special, but really working within the limitations of the LEGO system, like the hinge joints not existing in orange and all of the mixel joints only existing in dark gray and light gray. This was a phenomenal model, and I am so happy. I really believe that this is just a love letter to Bionicle, especially Bionicle 2001, and fans who have kept the theme alive, as Greg Farshty said. And so with that, we finally summed up this review, and I hope you all enjoy the Bionicle 2023 set. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our review of set number 40581, Bionicle, Tahu, and Takua. This is such an amazing commemorative set that kind of really celebrates what Bionicle was to the LEGO group, especially seeing that quote from Greg Farshty in the instructions was really cool to see how LEGO has remembered Bionicle today and remembers the impact it had on the company. Shame they spelled his name clearly wrong in the instructions. That's a little embarrassing for LEGO, but that's honestly a LEGO moment. LEGO does that quite a lot. But still, it's really cool to see this particular model being brought into the modern era. I certainly can't wait to display it alongside the other Bionicle models I have here. Let's go ahead and put him up next to Tahu there. And we'll go ahead and put Takua in place as well. So I'm going to go ahead and take Takua, put him right where I have my other version, and there you have it. Bionicle, Tahu, and Takua fully revealed. Very cool to see them next to each other, and I am just so happy to have been able to get a Bionicle set in 2023. It's a dream come true, and I really hope that this does well in terms of selling as a GWP. I hope that LEGO will be able to track Bricklink sales and realize how many people are getting this on Bricklink, and maybe, just maybe, this could be a sign that LEGO maybe should look into bringing back Bionicle one more time for Bionicle G3. But of course, that's far in the future. I just would love to see any sort of construction original theme being made for LEGO nowadays, and it's just so cool to get this. Thank you to the LEGO Ambassador Network for sending me this model. While, of course, the thoughts and opinions expressed in this review are my own, I do want to thank them for sending me this for free very early. I just could not talk about it, and it was really painful seeing a lot of people speculate online because I just had it in hand and was dying to join in. But now I'm so happy to have been able to share it with all of you, share my thoughts, and let me know in the comments, what do you think of this model? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? And I'd love to see people's mocks in terms of maybe building the other Toa in this style, or building Makuta or Takanuva in this particular building style. The sky is the limit here, so I can't wait to see what the creative Mockus of the community come up with. Thank you so much for tuning into Duck Breaks. I have been so excited to share this review, and be sure to stay tuned for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks, and bye for now.